I sat in the hard plastic chair, my palms slick with sweat. Paul, my boss, sat across from me, staring at a folder on his desk like it was the most important thing in the world. The kind of folder that contained your life's fate. "Charlie," Paul started, his voice low, controlled, "the company is restructuring. Unfortunately, your position has been eliminated." It felt like the air sucked out of the room. The words didn't make sense. This wasn't happening. Not to me. Not to someone who had spent 7 years pouring everything into this company. Not to someone who had always been reliable, the first to show up, the last to leave, the guy who fixed what no one else could. And now, just like that, I was being shown the door. I don't understand, I managed, but the words felt weak, useless. I wasn't even angry, just lost. "Business decisions," Paul said. That was it. No real explanation, no "thank you for the years of service," no "sorry we had to do this." Just those 2 words, like they could explain everything. The security guard, Rob, stood by the door, watching with that blank expression he always had, as if this was just another day at the office. I stood up slowly, my legs wobbly, and grabbed the cardboard box Paul handed me. I didn't even look at him, just started shoving my things into the box. Pens, a couple of old tech manuals, the odd cable that never seemed to belong anywhere. My coffee mug, the one that said "World's Okayest Engineer," slipped in there too. It felt like a betrayal, watching it tumble into the box like it was nothing. I paused for a second, staring at it, before tossing it on top of the pile. My hands shook as I picked up the framed picture of me and my mom from my first work anniversary. It was a good picture. She had been proud of me that day. Hell, she'd always been proud of me. I lingered there for a moment, the memories pulling at me, then shoved it into the box too, blinking hard. Around me, my coworkers, people who had been my friends, didn't even make eye contact. Dave from IT kept his eyes on the screen, pretending to be busy, and Jessica from marketing gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was sympathetic, but none of them helped. None of them said a word. The weight of it all, the silence, the shock, crushed me. I stood up, box in hand, feeling smaller than I ever had. I was the reliable one, the guy who never missed a deadline, the one who had always been there, but none of that mattered now. Just like that, it was over. As I walked out, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my brother Jake. "You should have been smarter, bro." I stared at it for a second, my stomach twisting. The words cut deeper than they should have. Jake had never really worked a day in his life. Yet somehow, it always felt like he was the one who came out on top. I shoved the phone back in my pocket and walked out of the building, my heart heavy, my thoughts scrambled. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I sat in my car, engine off, the steering wheel cold under my hands. The parking lot outside Triton Tech was almost empty now, just a few cars left in the spaces, all of them belonging to people who weren't getting fired today. I opened my phone. My dad, Elijah, had texted, "How's your day going, son?" It wasn't the question that got me. It was the tone, detached. Like I was just another guy he passed in the hallway. I stared at the screen for a moment before typing back. "I got fired today." The reply came almost instantly. Thumbs up emoji. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. A thumbs up emoji. That was all I got. No sympathy, no "sorry to hear that, son," or even a "what happened?" Just an emoji. My chest tightened, like I'd swallowed something sharp. This was how it always was. Never a word of encouragement, just silence when I needed it most. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life, but my apartment was waiting. It would be cold, empty, and silent, just like it always was now. When I got home, I threw the door open and kicked my shoes off, barely noticing them hit the wall. The place felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in on me. I went straight to the kitchen, but nothing in there felt like it belonged anymore. The bills on the counter piled higher than ever, the stack of them mocking me. The reality of it hit me then. No job, no backup plan, nothing but debt, and a family who didn't give a damn. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty room. It felt like I was suffocating in the silence, like the walls were pressing in on me, each second stretching longer than the last. I ran my hand through my hair, not knowing what to do next, how to fix this. Because, honestly, what was left to fix? Then I heard it, a soft thud by the door. I got up and walked over, expecting nothing. But there it was, an envelope slid under the door. I picked it up, half expecting a bill or worse, an apology card from my dad. But it was a letter, an invitation, Jake's promotion party, the big one, at the country club. I stared at it for a long time. The edges were crisp, professionally done, and it smelled like the kind of place that never cared about guys like me. The invitation was all smiles, all handshakes. It was clear they didn't even acknowledge what had just happened to me. It didn't matter. My brother was moving up the ladder, and I was sitting at the bottom, discarded like I had been nothing more than a bump in the road. Just as I was about to get up and grab my phone, it buzzed. I glanced down and saw Paul's name on the screen. Paul, my old boss from Triton Tech. I hadn't expected to hear from him. I answered, unsure of what to expect. "Charlie," Paul's voice came through, tight, almost anxious. "Can you meet me? In person?" My heart dropped. This wasn't a normal call. "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's this about?" I can't explain it over the phone," he said, and I could hear the unease in his tone. "But it's important. It's urgent, Charlie. Can you meet me tomorrow morning?" I felt a strange mix of confusion and curiosity. Why would Paul want to meet with me, especially after the way he'd let me go? "Yeah, I'll be there," I said, already wondering if this was going to change everything. I met Paul at a little cafe across town, a place that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 90s. The kind of spot you wouldn't expect anyone to care about. But here we were, sitting in a booth near the back, away from the other customers. Paul didn't look like himself. He looked older, his hair a little grayer, his shoulders slumped like he hadn't had a full night's sleep in months. He was fidgeting with his coffee cup, his fingers tapping nervously on the edge, like he was waiting for something to hit him. "Charlie," he started, voice low, eyes darting around the room, like he was afraid someone was listening. "I'm sorry. I never wanted things to go down like this." I just stared at him, trying to process his words. He'd never seemed so fragile before. Paul was always the confident one, the one who made decisions and didn't second-guess himself. But now, he seemed like a guy who'd been caught in something bigger than him. I leaned forward, the anger simmering inside me, but I held it in. "What are you saying, Paul?" He hesitated before speaking again, his eyes shifting. "It was Jake, your brother. He came to me a few weeks ago with something." He paused like he was choosing his words carefully, then went on. "A photo, a manipulated photo. He showed me this picture of you with a woman, someone from HR, said you were having an affair with her." I blinked, confused. What woman? "It wasn't even her," Paul said quickly, his face grim. "The photo was doctored. The woman in it wasn't even in the office that day. But Jake made it look like you were involved in something inappropriate. And he pushed it, spread rumors, told people your performance had slipped. He worked the angles, talked to the higher-ups, made it clear that you were a threat, that he could do more for the company if he was in a higher position." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Jake, my brother, how the hell could he do something like this? And to me, of all people. "He got to me, Charlie," Paul continued. "He said if I didn't let you go, he'd make sure your career would be over, that the rumors would keep spreading. I was trapped. He had more power than I did. I didn't have a choice." I felt the bile rise in my throat. "So, you fired me because of a lie? Because of something my brother made up?" Paul nodded, his eyes dark with guilt. "I'm sorry, Charlie. I didn't have the guts to fight back. I was just following orders, and I know it doesn't make it right. I should have told you, but it didn't seem real until it was too late." The rage in me was like a fire, hot and suffocating. "What the hell am I supposed to do with this, Paul?" My voice was shaking now, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I don't even know what to think. You've known this whole time, and you said nothing?" Paul lowered his head. "I couldn't. But I've been digging, Charlie. I've got evidence, proof that Jake lied, that he manipulated everything." I looked at him, trying to piece it all together. "What do you mean, evidence?" Paul pulled a manila folder from his bag and slid it across the table toward me. "Jake's been using this stuff to get ahead for months. I have screenshots, emails, even phone records. I've been saving it, just in case." I reached for the folder, my hands trembling as I opened it. There it was. Everything. Proof that Jake had been pulling strings, making false claims about my work, sending fake documents to the board. It was damning, and it was all real. But as I looked at the pages, a part of me froze. This wasn't just about getting my job back anymore. This was about taking down Jake, exposing him for who he really was. And that felt like something I wasn't sure I was ready for. Paul leaned in, his voice softer now. You've got a choice, Charlie. You can expose Jake, show everyone what he's been doing, or you can walk away. I can't make this decision for you, but I'll help you, if that's what you want. The weight of it all hit me like a ton of bricks. My brother had done this, destroyed everything, and now I had to decide if I was ready to burn him down. I looked at Paul, my mind spinning. I'll think about it. He nodded, like he knew what that meant. I get it. Take your time. But I didn't need time. I already knew what I had to do. The next few days were a blur. Paul had given me access to Triton's internal files, and I pored over them, unable to stop. I couldn't look away. It felt like I was sinking deeper into a dark hole, but I had to keep going. Every document, every contract, each email I opened only confirmed what I'd already known. My brother had been running a scam for years. Jake wasn't just skating by, he was stealing. I found dozens of fraudulent transactions, money paid to companies that didn't exist, contracts that had never been signed, inflated invoices for services that were never delivered. One invoice in particular caught my eye, a consulting fee from a company called Maverick Solutions. Jake's signature was there, clear as day, and the numbers, ridiculous. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for what? A fake contract. I followed the trail. I called up a few of the real consultants who had worked with Maverick Solutions, and after a little prodding, they spilled everything. They confirmed it. Maverick Solutions was a shell company with a handful of people hired to make it appear legitimate. And Jake had been personally pocketing the difference from the inflated contracts. He was getting rich off lies, and I'd been too blinded by family loyalty to see it. The papers in front of me felt like a confession. Every new document I uncovered felt like another nail in Jake's coffin. It should have felt like justice. I should have been savoring this moment, but instead I was just exhausted. I knew I was getting closer to something bigger, but what would I even do with all this? I sat back in my chair, rubbing my eyes, trying to make sense of it all. Exposing Jake would destroy him, but would it destroy me too? He was still my brother, and yet he wasn't the person I thought he was. I hadn't even realized my phone was buzzing until it vibrated off the table. I picked it up without thinking, still lost in my thoughts, and saw the name that made my stomach drop. Jake. I almost didn't answer, but something pulled me to it. Charlie, Jake's voice came through, slick and rehearsed. I wanted to let you know something. I've just been made chairman of the board at Triton. Dad pushed it through this morning. I froze. The words didn't register at first. Chairman? At Triton? My mind raced back to that day when I'd been thrown out of the building like I meant nothing. And now Jake had just been handed everything. Every position. Every influence. My brother was in control, and everything I'd been trying to rebuild felt like it was slipping further away. That's great, Jake, I managed to say, though it tasted like acid in my mouth. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Dad's fully backing me, he continued, his voice smug. You're probably feeling a little, what's the word, left out, huh? Don't worry, I'll take care of things for you. I could hear the smirk in his voice, the arrogance that always came with every win, no matter how dirty it was. I hung up the phone before I could say anything else. I felt a wave of heat rise up inside me. Chairman? That was it. He'd taken everything. And now he was going to own this too. The papers in front of me suddenly didn't matter as much. This was bigger. The whole game had changed. Now it wasn't just about exposing Jake for what he'd done. It was about taking back everything he'd stolen. I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about showing my family that I wasn't the one who had been played. The weeks that followed felt like I was living in a haze. I hardly slept, consumed by the need to gather everything I could on Jake and the people who had enabled him. I scoured through old files, met with contacts from the company, and dug deeper into the company's financials, all the while feeling like I was closing in on something that could change everything. But the more I uncovered, the worse it got. It wasn't just Jake anymore. My father, Elijah, had been pulling strings from behind the scenes, using his influence on the board to make sure Jake's rise went unchallenged. Elijah had always been the quiet manipulator in the background, but now it was clear he had been orchestrating the entire thing, pushing decisions, silencing opposition, using his power to make sure his son got ahead, no matter what. I knew my father had always played a big part in Jake's success, but I never thought he'd be willing to go this far. Every document I uncovered painted a clearer picture of just how deep Elijah's involvement went. He wasn't just watching it all happen, he was making it happen. I reached out to Margaret, an old acquaintance from Triton, someone I'd always respected. She had been a senior analyst at the company, but had never gotten the recognition she deserved. We'd always been on friendly terms, but I hadn't seen her much since the shakeup. "I'm in," Margaret said when I reached out to her, no hesitation in her voice. "I've got a few things you might want to see." She came through with more than I could have hoped for. Security footage from the company's systems, showing Jake meeting with vendors who were known for shady dealings. There he was, shaking hands with men whose names were linked to fraudulent activities, more evidence of his corruption. But even more damning was the footage she managed to get of Jake meeting with someone from Maverick Solutions. It was clear as day. He was making deals with people who were running a scam, all while covering his tracks. I watched the footage on my laptop late into the night, feeling the weight of each new discovery settle on my shoulders. This was it. This was everything. I could finally take Jake down. But as I began to assemble my plan, the doubt crept in. The party was only a few days away, and the more I thought about how to expose Jake, the more I realized how much I had to lose. If I went public with all this, there was no turning back. I couldn't undo the damage it would do to my family. No matter how much they had hurt me, they were still my family. I barely noticed when my phone buzzed, the text from Margaret flashing on the screen. "I have something else." I quickly called her back. "What's going on?" Her voice was low, urgent. "I just got my hands on something big. A conversation between your dad and Jake. They were talking about you, Charlie. And not in a good way." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "They were discussing how to take you down," Margaret continued, her voice tight. "How to ruin your career for good. Elijah was making sure you'd never get another chance, that you'd be out of the picture so Jake could keep rising." I sat there, the room spinning. I had suspected it, but hearing it out loud hit harder than I expected. My own father, the one who had always told me I was doing things the right way, had been part of a plan to destroy me. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered under my breath. "I'm serious," Margaret said. "I know this is a lot, but this conversation proves it. They've been working together the whole time, Charlie. You've been the target all along." I sat back in my chair, the weight of the truth pressing down on me. I wasn't just dealing with a brother who wanted to beat me. I was up against a whole system, a network of lies and manipulation that had been built up over years. My hand clenched around the phone, the blood rushing in my ears. This was it. This was my shot. I had the evidence. I had the proof. All I needed was the courage to use it. The pieces were falling into place, but I didn't know how much power I had left. My family had already shown how far they were willing to go to destroy me. This wasn't just about exposing Jake anymore. This was about tearing down everything they'd built, everything that had been built on lies. I stood in front of the country club, the suit I'd worn for years now feeling like armor. The cool night air brushed against my skin, but I barely noticed it. My heart was thumping in my chest, not out of nerves, but because I knew what was coming next. Inside, the sound of clinking glasses and polite laughter spilled into the parking lot. The party was in full swing, and Jake was at the center of it, as usual, boasting about his promotion, acting like he had the world at his feet. I knew he wouldn't see it coming, but I would. I walked through the club's grand doors, and the room hit me with a wave of noise. Fancy suits, fake smiles, clinking champagne glasses. Jake was standing near the stage, surrounded by well-wishers, all eager to praise him for what he'd achieved. His voice was loud and unmistakable, full of bravado, even though I could see the way his eyes were glassy, the alcohol already loosening his tongue. "Here's to success," Jake said, raising his glass high, slurring just a little. "To hard work, perseverance, and never letting anyone get in your way." The crowd applauded. A few people chuckled, and I saw my dad standing in the corner, watching Jake with that same proud expression he always had, like Jake was his golden child. I gritted my teeth, knowing what I had to do. I didn't make a scene. I didn't push through the crowd. I didn't make a sound as I walked to the front of the room. But when I grabbed the microphone, the whole place went silent. The shift in the atmosphere was instant. Everyone felt it. Jake's drunken grin faltered, eyes narrowing as I stood there, holding a folder filled with my evidence. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "No one's going anywhere," I said, my voice steady. "Not until we've had a little conversation about how things really went down. A low murmur went through the room. My father's eyes widened, panic flickering behind them. He started to move toward me, but I was already opening the folder. First, let's talk about Maverick Solutions, I said, pulling out the first document. Jake signed off on these inflated invoices, consulting fees for services that were never delivered. These weren't just mistakes. This was planned. I held up a copy of the invoice, and the room fell dead quiet. I could feel the eyes on me, on Jake, watching, waiting. I stepped forward and started reading out the numbers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, all funneled into Jake's pocket. He's been scamming the company for years. Jake's face turned white. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I moved on, pulling up a second page. Security footage from Maverick Solutions, showing Jake meeting with the vendors behind the scam. This isn't just one deal, I continued. This is a network of fraud, and it's all connected back to him. People were already pulling out their phones, the murmurs growing louder. I could feel the room shifting, the power I'd once lost coming back to me, piece by piece. I wasn't just clearing my name. I was tearing Jake down in front of everyone who'd ever believed in him. I saw my dad, standing by the bar, his face redder by the second. He was speechless, his fists clenched at his sides. I knew what was coming next, but I wasn't done yet. And this, I said, pulling out the final piece of the puzzle. This is the most important part. Jake and my father, working together to get me fired. They orchestrated the whole thing. The lies, the rumors about my performance. They didn't just want me out of the company. They wanted me gone for good. I could see my father's eyes lock with mine, the shame finally creeping across his face. But it was too late. The room had already turned. Jake tried to speak, his voice a little panicked now, but no one was listening to him. 2 security guards were already stepping forward, one on either side of him. He didn't resist. They didn't give him a chance. "Jake Hayes," the head of security said, voice cold, "you're going to have to leave." Jake stood frozen for a moment, as if processing what was happening. Then, without a word, he was escorted out of the room. His reputation shattered in front of the very people who had supported him. The room was silent, but only for a second. Then people started talking, murmuring, pointing at each other. Some looked at my father, others at me. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one in control. My father stood there, his face a mask of anger and humiliation. But I didn't care. I had nothing left to lose. And Jake, he'd just lost everything. The fallout hit fast. Less than a week after Jake's humiliating exit from his own promotion party, everything started to crumble. The board wasted no time revoking his position as chairman. It wasn't long before Jake had to resign from his spot altogether. His career in tatters. My father, Elijah, wasn't spared either. Under mounting pressure from the same board he'd been controlling, he had no choice but to step down. It was all coming apart, everything they'd built, and I was standing there watching it. The most unexpected part, though, was what came next. Triton Tech, the company that had fired me just weeks before, came calling. They offered me the role of Chief Technology Officer, the very position Jake had been groomed for. They wanted me, not just as a token, not as someone to fill a gap, but as someone to lead. It was surreal. The same company that had cast me aside was now handing me the keys to the kingdom. I wasn't going to pretend it didn't feel good, that satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. I'd fought for this, clawed my way back into something I could finally own. But I couldn't linger on that feeling for long. I'd learned something important over the last few weeks. Revenge wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming your life, and that's exactly what I was doing. I walked into my new office, the door swinging open with a satisfying whoosh, the floor beneath me feeling more solid than it ever had before. My desk was bare, a clean slate, no piles of old papers, no remnants of the past, just a blank surface, waiting for me to build something new. I took a moment to just stand there, taking it in. I wasn't some underdog anymore. I wasn't the guy who had been thrown out without a second thought. I was the one in control now. But the phone rang before I could get too comfortable. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I had to. It was Jake. His voice was different, small, quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Charlie," he started, and I could hear the hesitation in his tone. Look, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. I never meant for it to go this far. I didn't say anything for a moment. The silence on the other end was heavy. I didn't know what I expected, but it wasn't this. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm better than you," he continued. "I thought if I crushed you, I'd finally be good enough. But I get it now, Charlie. I screwed up." I let out a long breath, leaning back in my chair, feeling that same weight pressing on my chest. But I didn't feel sorry for him. Not anymore. "Jake," I said finally, "I don't need your apology. You've made your choices and so have I. I'm not the same guy I was when I walked into that office. I don't need your approval or Dad's. I'm building my life on my own terms now." The line went quiet for a long time, before Jake spoke again, quieter this time. "Yeah, I figured that." I hung up without another word. The truth was, I'd spent my whole life trying to make them proud, trying to show them that I was enough. But in the end, it wasn't about them. It was about me. About rebuilding my life and finding a way to stand tall on my own. And as I sat there at my desk, looking out over the city, I realized that my life was just beginning again. The man who had been cast aside was now the one in control,